Welcome to John's Tarot. Thank you very much. I hope everybody out there is doing really well today and that you're enjoying my little podcasts as much as I enjoy doing them. Today I'm going to talk about people who have touched my life. And it's been kind of a weird experience. There's people who have touched my life who I've never met. And we are separated sometimes by 1,000 years, thousands of years, but yet it feels like they've reached through time to touch my life and affect my life and change me. What are you talking about? You'll see. You'll see. And we're going to take a little trip. Are you ready?
You take the blue pill. The story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill. You stay in Wonderland. And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
And that's what we're going to do today. We're going to take a little trip down the rabbit hole. I had really difficult circumstances. I come out of very difficult circumstances, at least psychologically difficult circumstances. I always had enough to eat. But they were difficult circumstances and difficult psychological circumstances that I needed to transcend some really serious problems. And I've talked about it before, multi-generational addiction problems where stuff was handed down to me from past generations, which was not my stuff I should have to carry in a lifetime. But I carried it until I was able to figure it out. It had to do with my drinking and alcoholism, things like that. But I was lucky enough that I encountered some specific tools along the way. And this is where, these people helped change my life, helped change my thinking. And that's what I'm going to talk about a little bit today. My first one was a fellow called Nichiren Daishonin. Nichiren Daishonin was a Buddhist priest and scholar. He lived between the years of 1222 to 1282. And he founded the sect of Buddhism that I was introduced to. And Buddhism, this sect of Buddhism was easily attainable. And this is the sect of Buddhism that I encountered. And was easy for me to understand and easy for me to practice. And provided me with a different way of looking at life. When you change, my opinion is that religions are like, well, they're like operating systems for a computer, only they're operating systems for the human mind, and that they will affect how you disseminate information. And my encounter with the Buddhism of Nichiren Daishonin and the Lotus Sutra profoundly affected me and gave me a set of tools that, quite frankly, were not available to my forefathers, to my father, my great-grandfather, my grandfather. They just didn't have those tools available to them, nor I think would they've been receptive to them if they were. The form of Buddhism founded by Nichiren Daishonin, and he was an enlightened human being. He was a Buddha. There's been different Buddhas throughout history. Shakyamuni Buddha was probably, I think that's the one. Siddhartha, the Buddha from India, was probably the first one, and there's been different enlightened Buddhas throughout history. Nichiren Daishonin was an enlightened Buddha. He was an enlightened human being, and his teachings helped me hear the popping sound. What do you mean the popping sound? As my head coming out of my butt, that made a popping sound. And the Buddhism of Nichiren Daishonin was really help.
Open the pod bay doors, please, Hal.
Yep, help open the pod bay doors for me personally. And what was huge in my change and my transformation into a decent human being. And it was like he reached through time, from 1282 in order to touch my life. 1989 is when I finally came about, kind of popped into reality. And it was really huge. The next thing that really touched my life and reached through time in order to touch my life was the I Ching. I just have a copy up here, the illustrated I Ching. I came about it during my early years of practicing Buddhism, during my first year. Somebody gave me a copy, and I did an episode on the I Ching and what the I Ching does and what it. I'll talk about it just briefly in case this is your first time hearing me. The I Ching is a oracle. You can ask it questions, and it will answer your questions. It came to me in 1988 before I got sober, and somebody gave me a copy. And the I Ching generally comes to people when they're in periods of transition to act as a guide. The I Ching is about 2,000 to 3,000 years old. Some of the things that are talked about in the I Ching are that old, and it comes to us in modern form. The reason it has lasted so long is because its wisdom is so profound. You can ask it questions, it'll answer your questions. It took me a while to figure out an issue when I initially got it. It took me a while to figure out how to use it, although it's really very simple. You ask it questions, you can roll some coins, and it'll give you an answer. I forget how many hexagrams there are, but they cover about every aspect of human life, and it provides you a different standpoint and a different way to look at your life or to look at the question that is in front of you. It can help you predict the future if given certain circumstances. If I continue my current behavior, what might I expect if I choose this path? What might I expect? And it'll give you that type of guidance in life. And the I Ching I have found to be a wonderful companion throughout life. It's always told me the truth. It's always given me a different way to look at life. It's given me a little clues, a little hints on things. I remember one time it was talk to me about if I wasn't so self-centered, like with early sobriety. Talk to me about being self-centered and how I have to look at life not just like how everything is affecting me. Life is bigger than that. And I thought, oh, okay. And then the I Ching has been huge in guiding my life. I continue to use it today as a guide in life and as a way of reflection on what's going on. And the I Ching is my second thing. It's a system. It's a system designed by somebody I'll go into a little bit more in an archetypal field, 3,000 years ago. And he was able to put down pieces of that into a document. Now, the I Ching has been added to throughout the centuries by other people. Archetypal fields. And we're going to talk a little bit more about archetypal fields. And it's a wonderful guide. If you ever have the opportunity to encounter it, you are very fortunate indeed. My next people who affected my life, Bill Wilson and Dr. Bob. Well, I finally heard the popping sound, and I finally got sober. These guys had developed a program for living designed for people like me. I was really wondering. I was wondering the other day, how did I get here from where I started? It has been, what a long, strange trip it's been. And these guys developed the program of the 12-step program. And I could go into a lot of detail with that, but that's not the purpose of this podcast. Just that their system for living. And these guys, they probably put together the big book, 1935, I want to say, approximately there. I will be corrected. And I think Bill Wilson passed away in the early to mid 60s, and Dr. Bob before then. Yet the system for living that they designed, and they designed and they put forth in the big book, touches my life today and gave me a firmer foundation on how to live a life and how to live a life that was more functionable. I've been sober now for 37 years. Huge. I couldn't do it on my own. I tried to do it on my own, and I failed many, many times until I finally ran into. So I encountered Buddhism, I was practicing that. I encountered the I Ching, and that was kind of like maybe forced me to look at myself. And then I encountered these guys, and really transformed my life. And the system they put forth, I am eternally grateful for, because it's something I continue to engage in, and it's been very helpful. and not only helpful, life transforming. They put together this system that helped transform my life, and an organization that helped transform my life. And I talk about that when I did a whole series on addiction and the disease of addiction. And I talk about structure and the structure they designed, a design for living for people like me, and a society for me to be a part of. Other sober people trying to live sober lives, and how do you do that with the stressors of normal daily life? These guys here, huge reach through time, touched my life. Alan Watts. Alan Watts was a philosopher. He was in 60s and 70s. I think he finally passed away, probably 70s or early 80s. And somehow I got interested in Alan Watts, and he talks about Buddhism. He talks about Taoism. He is a philosopher. I think he was an Anglican priest at one time. Huge influence on me. I would listen to Alan Watts endlessly. And the difference between Alan Watts and myself, Alan Watts was a educated philosopher, and he would describe Buddhism, Taoism, as a lecturer, as somebody from the outside, as these are the principles of this philosophy and what to expect. And he talked about a lot of different things that were really groundbreaking. Like, I never heard of people talk about things like what the way Alan Watts described it. And the difference between him and me is what I describe is he described it from the outside in. I describe it. What does life look like from the inside out when you take these principles and actually apply them to your life and use them for a way of transformation? And that's the difference between a lot of differences between Alan Watts and me. But my lectures, my discussions are usually from the outside in, but you're taking the same principles that Alan Watts talked about, and what happens when you apply them to your life. What does that look like? What does that feel like? What does that do to you? And that is what my discussions are a lot like. I was heavily influenced by Alan Watts, and I owe him a debt of gratitude. He reached through time. By the time I was doing Alan Watts, he had already passed away, but his lectures were out there on tape. They're out there available. Really groundbreaking and very fascinating to listen to, and they're evergreen. You know that they're still, even though he's passed away, the things he talked about are still like evergreen. They're still real. They're still applicable to daily life. So my thanks to Alan Watts. Noam Chomsky. Oh, and I believe Dr. Chomsky is still alive. Somebody introduced me to Noam Chomsky, and I read a couple of books of his back in the early 90s, and really opened up my eyes to what's going on in the world, how our political actions are affecting people. Things aren't always the way that we perceive, because what we perceive are things that are presented to us on network news, on Fox News, on CNN News, what's written in the newspaper. Noam Chomsky looks much deeper, or he did look much deeper. He's still out there. I think he's still publishing things, but affected my life and forced me to abandon some of my preconceived concepts of how the world worked. Oh, the United States, we're the good guys. We're always the good guys. We're the white hats. It's not that way. And unfortunately, it's not that way. And he didn't force me, but he opened my eyes to look deeper into political discussion, into concepts. And he's still much wiser than I am, but he really helped develop how I view politics and how I view the information technology that is presented to us, to look deeper. And Noam Chomsky was really somebody who helped affect me. And do I have anybody else? This is Arthur E. Waite. Arthur E. Waite was a part of the Golden Dawn. I forget what it was. The Golden Dawn, which was a philosophical organization back in the late 1800s. And he helped design he did the technical part of the design with Pamela Colman Smith to the modern tarot deck. And he gave her all the outline for the major arcana. Pamela Colman Smith put all the ideas into into the cards, into the tarot deck, the modern tarot deck that I use. It is my belief that Pamela Colman Smith, and this is back from 1909 when they developed the tarot deck that we use today. That is that it broke ground with tarot reading, really heavily made it more accessible to people. That she also experienced that archetypal field. And that's where a lot of her designs come from, is a deep archetypal field. And I don't believe she does not. She passed away, wasn't particularly wealthy, nor did she receive credit for the work that she did on the tarot deck. But the artwork and the tarot deck that she provided continues to affect my life. There is so much information in that in a tarot deck that it is a fascinating study for me to continue to use today. The system that she developed in conjunction with Mr. Waite continues to be a system I use today and a source of continued fascination and a deeper insight into my life and how it works. And I guess I didn't put up there Carl Jung. Carl Jung also affected my life, reached through time. And I don't have a picture of him up here because it just occurred to me. I neglected to add him. Carl Jung, the work of Carl Jung, especially his work on individuation, on that deeper transformation into a deeper adulthood. Not everybody achieves a level of individuation. Most people just stay with their the things that they were given to in their family of origin and don't progress past that. I've been able to progress past that with the help of the teachings of Carl Jung. Carl Jung was also big into the I Ching. He wrote a foreword to an earlier copy of the I Ching. He also was into tarot, and he talked about archetypes, and he talked about synchronicity, and these were all concepts of Carl Jung. Carl Jung was also involved to some extent in the 12-step, and it's a 12-step work. If you look on my webpage, on the Soul Awakens page, you'll see I have a little video of a rabbi who describes the contribution of Carl Jung, the idea of using a spirituality in conjunction with recovery from addiction, and that addicted people are what they're really searching for is spiritual wholeness, that desire to touch the ultimate reality and a spiritual awakening. And these are all concepts that were introduced by Carl Jung. Carl Jung wasn't involved with the 12 steps. He gave these concepts to Roland Hazard, I believe his name was. Roland gave them to somebody else, and then Bill and Bob encountered that. Bill Wilson encountered them and explained them to Dr. Bob, and they incorporated these concepts into the 12 steps. And that was Carl Jung's contribution to reaching through time and touching me, and in terms of transformation. So let's move over to my tarot deck. I guess I didn't talk about Jesus because I'm not particularly that big of a. I'm not that particularly big of a of a Christian. I was raised that way, but it just for me, I'll tell you the truth, it just didn't touch my life. But I did find some things that did touch my life. Christianity is fine. And maybe a lot of you out there say, well, Jesus was a wonderful person that reached through time and touched my life. Maybe if you're a Jewish person, maybe Moses, the concept of Moses reached through time and touched your life. Those are all legitimate and realistic ideals. So let's do a little tarot reading. How is it that how people design these systems and thoughts that are able to reach through time and touch our lives. I guess the Buddha was, I did talk about Nichiren Daishonin as a Buddha, but the original Buddha, he reached through time and touched many people's lives. How is it that Muhammad reached through time and touches many people's lives? How is it that people create these systems that can reach through time and touch our lives today? And that is my question to the tarot. My ability to read tarot is a gift, an expression of divine love. How is it that people are able to design systems that reach through time and touch our lives today? Let me see what we got here. I'm just going to I just do 3-card readings. The question, it's the question that drives us. The tarot is just a way of looking at the question, looking at the answer. How is it that people are able to reach through time and touch our lives? So cut the deck. My first card is the 6 of Wands. If you are lucky enough to have somebody like the people I discussed today reach through time and touch your life in a positive way to transform you and your behavior and your relationship to your environment, that is a victory. And people will notice you, man, because you stick out like a sore thumb as somebody who has overcome tremendous obstacle, as somebody who has changed their life. And many people think, well, he just pulled himself up by his own bootstraps. That's generally not the way it happens. You generally come into contact with somebody like the people I've been talking about today. Maybe it was Jesus, maybe who reached through time and touched your life, and it turned your life into a victory. Second card is the King of Wands. The King of Wands is somebody who is he knows how to manage systems. He knows how to manage people. These people reach through time and touch our lives because they know how to manage people. They know how to manage systems. If you subscribe to some of their teachings, they will help you manage your life. They will help you manage, like the King of Wands is somebody who knows how to get people to work for him. He knows how to achieve his aims. He knows how to have other people achieve his aims. And that's what these people I talked about today. They've reached through time and help us achieve our aims in life in order to change and become better people and to become successful in life. And that's how one way that this thing happens. And my third card is the 9 of Wands, the veteran. I always call him the veteran because he stands there with a bandage on his head, leaning on a wand. He's like he's come out of a battle, but he's ready for the next battle. These people have overcome tremendous personal obstacles in order to bring us the teaching that they bring us, and or however that touches your life. These people were not generally born. The original Buddha was born into pleasant circumstances, but he went through his own battles in life before he attained enlightenment. All these people went through significant obstacles, and they felt that it was worth going through them in order to help leave behind something of value that is there to help us as we struggle with our lives and the challenges in our lives, and have left us paths to follow. And how did these veterans of the past follow? And that is what we're going to wrap up with today. I'll read it real quick. The six of Wands. If you found one of these teachers, good for you. You'll be led to victories in life, and you found a path, and that is a victory. And people will recognize, wow, this guy's really changed. He's really become successful. How did he do it? We've done it by following some of these leaders of the past, whoever it is you chose in your life, whoever comes to your attention, Jesus, Muhammad, or the Nichiren Daishonin, or Bill and Bob. These people knew how to design systems and knew how to lead people, and they left behind a trail for us to follow. And then the 9 of Wands wasn't easy for them. We look at them, we hold them up on a pedestal, but they've all come out of tremendous obstacle in order to achieve some level of understanding that they left behind for us to follow. So I'm going to wrap this up for today.
Bye, Professor Marvel, and thanks a lot.
It was my pleasure. I want you to be careful, be cool, be kind. And remember, have courage, find faith. And I'll talk to you again real soon. Okay, thank you for listening.